Here's a guy who thinks I'm not really an atheist.
I want to ask you a question before you make up your mind about that. Not about whether Christianity is comfortable or popular or old-fashioned,
It seems like it's all of those things.
but which story do you move in? Which story do you live in? And maybe another question, if you're an atheist, are you just living in denial?
What would be the point of that? I know a lot of Christians think that atheists just pretend to not believe in God because they just want to sin, but I'd sin whether I believed in God or not. So what would be the point of denying the existence of a God I secretly believed in?
Every morning, without thinking about it, you make 1,000 small decisions. What to eat, where to go, who to call. And underneath every one of those decisions is a story about who you are, what matters to you, how you feel, and where your life is headed.
And if the plot of that story is that you want to know and glorify God, I don't see how it's any less arbitrary than any atheist's story.
Nobody actually lives without a story like that. We can't. We're not the kind of creatures who just react to the world. We're the kind who ask why. Why get up? Why work? Why love? Why keep going when it's hard? And your personal story, your version of why, only makes sense inside a much bigger story. A story about the whole world, about whether any of this actually means something or whether it doesn't.
Even if there is a God, I don't see any objective meaning because there's no objective, non-circular reason why we ought to fulfill the purpose that God wants us to fulfill.
Right now, two very different stories are competing for your belief. Story A says the universe is, at its core, an accident.
No, apologists often set up this false dichotomy between the cosmos existing because it was consciously and deliberately created, or its existence is a matter of spontaneous chance. I don't believe either is the case. Theists should understand that this is a false dichotomy because if you try to apply the same argument to explaining God's existence, they reject it. They neither believe that God was consciously and deliberately created, nor do they believe that God's existence is a product of blind chance. Rather, they believe that God's existence is logically necessary. I believe that the existence of the cosmos is logically necessary. I don't believe that the complete non-existence of time and space is a coherent concept. It seems more like the absence of any concept.
Matter colliding with matter, obeying blind physical laws.
Matter doesn't obey laws. Laws merely describe how things behave all on their own. And why does it matter that they're blind? Things that behave in a regular fashion will result in an orderly system without needing any conscious direction. The idea that blind laws can't do this, or even exist, without some conscious entity imposing order upon them assumes that the default state of reality is chaos, which I think is entirely baseless.
For no reason at all.
Do you believe that God exists for no reason at all?
On this account, you are simply here by chance.
Do you believe that God exists by chance?
Nothing designed for you. Nothing is waiting for you. There is no why, only what happens next.
Do you believe that there is no why with respect to the existence of God? I believe that the cosmos exists and is the way it is for the same reason you believe that God exists and is the way he is.
Story B has something very different. That behind everything, behind the stars, the seasons, your own heartbeat, stands a person.
You don't actually believe that applies to everything. If you really believed that behind literally everything stands a person, then you would have to believe that there is also a person behind that person, and an infinite regress of persons behind that person. Instead, you believe that there is a person that exists neither because of chance or design. I take the more parsimonious approach of inferring that physical reality exists because of neither chance nor design.
Not a force, not an accident, a God who made the world on purpose and made you specifically to know him.
Why, though? What's the point of that? And if God wants me to know him, why does anyone need to be converted to any of the religions that worship him? Why is his existence not obvious to everyone?
Two stories that are mutually exclusive. Only one of them can be true. And whichever one you believe, whether you've thought about it or not, is shaping how you live. Here's the strange part. Story A, the story that claims we're accidents,
I don't believe that we are accidents any more than you believe that God is an accident.
that there is no purpose,
Even if there is a God, following the purpose that he has in mind is at least as arbitrary as following one that you made up yourself.
the one so many assume is the modern and reasonable and educated choice, this is a story almost no one can actually live in.
Any story that says there is no objective meaning is a story everyone lives in, even if there is a God, because there is no ultimate non-circular reason why you ought to do what God wants you to do.
Because every day, all of us, believer and skeptic alike, live as if love is real.
What do you mean by real? It's an emotion that people really feel, but that would be the case regardless of whether a God exists.
Choices are important.
Choices have consequences, if that's what you mean by important, but this is the case regardless of whether there's a God.
And some things are actually right, and others are genuinely wrong.
Some things are demanded by my conscience, but that also is the case regardless of the existence of any God. In fact, I won't be able to keep myself from doing what my conscience demands, even if there is a God who says my conscience is wrong. So not only is a God unnecessary for my morality, the existence of one is altogether inconsequential with regard to my morality.
But if story A is true down to its foundations, none of that can actually be real.
Why can't love be real without a God? Why can't my conscience be real without one?
Love would just be chemicals.
Soap is just chemicals. Is soap therefore not real? And even if love were some spooky woo-woo supernatural phenomenon, why would that require a God?
Right and wrong would just be an opinion.
Or a conviction.
We may, at some point in the future, live in a time where slavery is all right again.
There will never be a time when it is tolerable to my conscience, even if God comes down from heaven and says, you may buy slaves, as he did in the Old Testament. I have a feeling, though, that if God told you that people are allowed to buy slaves, it would be just fine by you.
Meaning would just be a trick your brain plays on you.
How is choosing a meaning that you make up for yourself any more of a trick than choosing a meaning that God made up for you?
Try telling that father in that moment that his love for his child is nothing more than a molecular event.
What else would it be? If you tell him that it's a spooky woo-woo supernatural phenomenon, how would that grant it any more value?
He wouldn't believe you.
So there are no fathers who believe in physicalism?
Now, it's not as if he hasn't thought it through. It's just that some things are too real to talk yourself out of. In that moment, he doesn't believe story A. The truth is, we can't actually live in story A.
Whatever story says that you have to choose your own meaning based on your own values is the story nobody has any choice but to live in, regardless of whether there is a God.
Life in this story contradicts itself every time you love someone, forgive someone, or hope for tomorrow.
How do you figure? Why do any of these things require a belief in nonsensical woo?
Which brings us back to another story, the one where the universe isn't an accident.
I don't believe that the universe is an accident, nor that it was made for a purpose, for the same reason that you don't believe that God is an accident or made with a purpose.
Where you weren't a mistake. Where a personal God made you on purpose and for a purpose.
If that's the case, that purpose is no less arbitrary than any purpose I may make up for myself.
That story doesn't just explain why the universe exists, it explains you.
I believe the universe exists for the same reason that you believe that God exists.
Why love feels real, and why justice matters.
I don't understand why love feeling real would mean that it doesn't feel like chemical activity. And justice matters because my conscience enforces it upon me, which would be the case even if there were no God.
And why your love feels like it's supposed to mean something.
I don't even know what that means. To everyone who helps me out on Patreon, you're a big help. Thanks so much.